So when you're ready, we'll just jump in.
Yeah. I mean, I have zero. Are you just going to ask me stuff?
Yeah, we're just going to talk.
Cool.
That's what we find is
perfect, because I didn't prepare anything.
To be frank, it's actually what I enjoy the most.
Perfect. I will talk to you anytime.
Exactly. So one of my oldest friends in recovery, we have a lot of experiences together. Formerly, Jamie Johnson. But today, that's how I think of you. You're still on my phone.
I know.
As Jamie Johnson. Like, no offense to your husband. I love him too.
Well,
but
no
today, Jamie Abner, welcome.
I never changed my name legally.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I was like, it's going to be easier. And it's not. It's harder because I have to remember, who am I Jamie Johnson? Who am I Jamie Abner with?
Right.
And so, like, Verizon still knows I'm Jamie Johnson. So I'll call people and they'll be like, oh, I thought this was... And I'm like, shit. Like, it's just...
Right. How did your husband feel about this? He doesn't care.
You met him. He doesn't care. He doesn't even probably know. I mean...
Is he recovering like I am from, like, not watching college football anymore?
Yeah, he's
done with it?
He got him with the basketball for a little bit.
Right.
He was very, like, excited about that.
Right.
And he wanted to be, but then...
Right.
I mean, yeah, I think he's, like...
Both of us are retired.
Yeah, it's because it's, like, more than just a game. As I knew from meeting you, because, like, me being from up north, I never... understood the college football like you did. Like, I was like, yeah, I'm a Badgers fan, but, like, not really. I just was like, go Wisconsin.
But you're a cheesehead.
That is true.
Not to be confused with the derogatory drug sense, but in terms of
I didn't know that
Green
there
Bay,
even was a derogatory drug
that's fine.
sense. Okay.
But cheesehead in terms of the Packers.
Yes.
Huge Packers fan, though.
Yes. Which is why I'm happy that you guys have Joey. And I feel so happy when I walked in his office.
And you saw the, yeah, right.
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
Like, immediately, I was like, I like him.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, before we go too deep, if you don't mind, just introduce yourself,
Sure.
tell people who you are, and what you're currently doing today.
I will. So I am Jamie Abner, and I am an alumni of Cumberland Heights and former staff. Love this place. It saved not only my life, but my brother's life, and huge fan of any time I get asked to come back out here.
Yeah,
I will be here. So since right now I'm a family ambassador for a program called Family First Adolescent Services. So it is in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, and I'm working with a lot of local families and their adolescents, and we treat primary mental health, primary substance use, really specialize in complex and developmental trauma. So we're a residential for boys for 45 to 90 days.
We love Family First.
And we love
Shout
you guys. Yeah. We're big fans.
Yeah. So can we just talk about your recovery? Is that okay?
We can.
When did you come to Cumberland Heights?
August 1st, 2008.
What was that like?
It was, I don't remember a ton of it. It wasn't like the most clarity, but I think for me, I had a good friend who I was in his home group in Milwaukee, and I had tried to go like in and out of the rooms, and he was
You were
saying,
trying, yeah, you had some
kind
knowledge.
of trying.
Right.
I mean, I wasn't fully invested.
How did you find out about meetings? Like even before then? Like did somebody be like, because how old were you then?
20.
Right.
And I think just like going to some local in Milwaukee or in Wisconsin, I went to treatment several times. And so they took me to meetings. And so I had found out about them that way. Right. But I was still like, I mean, my big thing, because I was 20 and I was like, well, I'm not an alcoholic. Like, they haven't given me time to become that.
How could I be?
I mean, there's like little things. Like I was 20 and I remember I was at an IOP up there and I was going to Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young when it was all four of them. And I was like so set on, well, I don't know how much longer the four of them are going to play. I have to go. And of course, like they tried to give me a drug screen the next day. And I was like, this is outlandish, like the audacity. And I left. And then, but you know, like throughout that, I had gone to some meetings. And so I think it just like, my friend Ken was telling me about, hey, you got to go to this place in Tennessee called Cumberland Heights. And I was like, no, because I'm not an aspiring musician. Like, I don't want to ride horses. Like, I just had this image, and I was like, no, until I was ready, until I was, like, kicked out. I would say, like, the more treatment I went to, the more my mother, who is a neuropsychologist and has all of the information intellectually, but was enabling me to death. And so it's funny because we talk about that now, but it's like, it doesn't matter what you know. I'm her daughter, and she wants to do whatever she can to help me, and she thinks she's helping me. And so anyway, throughout all of these little kind of treatments, she learned more and more about it and started practicing boundaries. And, you know, I kind of tried to call her bluff a few times. And she, you know, the last time she locked me out of her house. And so it was kind of like that last 6 months was really a bottom for me. where I wasn't able to go home. I didn't have that financial support. My kind of addiction was at an all-time low. And so I remember when my boyfriend at the time got arrested, naturally, then I was like, now what? And so I remember going back home and I said, I am willing. We can go to that weird Tennessee place. I'll do whatever, and so luckily she was like, okay, this is the last time. And so we made a few phone calls, and the next day we got in the car and drove down to Tennessee. Here. Yeah. Mm. It was not a great drive. Not a great drive. Physically, emotionally, yeah, not a great drive. And she dropped me off here, and she was like...
Do you remember that day?
Vaguely. I remember they had to expedite me because I was pretty sick. And I do remember, I signed over my car to her. This. I was so willing. I was like, I don't care. I'm going to die if I don't get help at this point. And so I was just like... It was miserable, so sick the whole way down here. We kept having to stop. And so I just remember she was not happy because here she is doing this again after she said, maybe 2 treatments ago, this is the last time.
Oh, I see. Right.
So, and so she did it. And again, she saved my life. All of this did. And I tell her that, and we're best friends today. But that was probably the one relationship that was the most impacted. But yeah, I remember what I remember about that day. It's pretty blurry, and I was just so sick. I just couldn't wait to get to medical and get some meds, And I do remember her saying, no, I'm not coming to family. You're on your own. If you screw this up, you're done. And I believed her. This time I believed her. And so I didn't talk to her for probably the first 2 weeks I was here. And then I think finally, she had communicated with some staff, and then I spoke to her, and finally then she came to family program, and she was still kind of no bullshit, which was good. I remember, because we had done this so many times before. And I remember we were in the family program, and one of the things Dar, and them, who's amazing, they had on there, it was you have to define what love is. And I remember Mom said, love is action. And she looked at me right in the eye. And I remember that. But I was so lucky when I was here because I was 21. And I remember I had Regina Taylor, and it was back when the groups were still co-ed. She had the relapse group. And I remember, I was just so sick and in a detox bed for a while. And I think she came to the detox unit to talk to me. And she was saying, normally I don't take anybody your age. But I think, with your history and with your willingness, we're going to take you.
We'll make an exception.
Yeah. And she was amazing. She was the most... I saw her for private practice. I went to her for therapy when I left. And she's just I just love that woman. Yeah, she was amazing.
Yeah. What were you using before you came?
Heroin, crack were the kind of the 2 that took me down the fastest. Any opiates, weed, alcohol. Right. I mean, really anything.
So you were big sick.
Yeah.
In terms of when you're starting to detox, it was
it was
very
bad because it was a lot of heroin at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably more than I had done.
Yeah. What do you remember about the community here? Those first couple of days, man. Was there anything that sticks out? Everybody's got a unique story
I have
about.
So many
you know
stories.
What I mean?
I had so much fun in treatment here.
Me too.
I mean, it was so much fun. I wish I could come. It's just sometimes I meet people that I like to call normies that aren't in recovery, and I'm like, gosh, you don't even know. It's just I had the most fun ever. I mean, I was desperate too, and it was hard, and I did a lot of work. But again,
why do you think it was fun?
Oh, the connection, the community, absolutely. All of these people that we didn't have anything in common outside of here, really. You probably wouldn't have talked to them on the street, but you're in treatment and you're just bonding and you're connecting. And I had so many good relationships that I met when I was here in treatment, and we just were friends for years afterwards. So many good relationships, and we just had so much fun. It's that inner child. You're here healing, and you're cut off from just the BS of the outside world, and you're not worrying about, not I had anything going on at that time, really, just am I getting arrested today? It was different, but now you're in this kind of safe bubble, and you're just focusing on you, and you're bonding with so many people, and it was just that connection. It was the community, a sense of I loved it. I remember telling Regina one time, I said, I'm going to work here. And she's like, well, you've got to, you got to have 2 years. So just today. And I was like, oh, I'm working. Throughout my time here, I was like, I'm doing this time. And I was and I loved all the staff and the community and the food. When Jimmy Threadgill's kitchen, all that food. Yeah. I probably gained 40 pounds. I don't know if I did, but it was so good.
I think that since there's a lot of people that talk about that. We have a few people on here that are alumni, right? But everybody always talks about that power of identification, just being different, you know, and how like disarming that can be for folks that are here, and how laughing and like, remember how important like movie night was?
Yeah.
You know, like what DVD are we gonna like vote on? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, well, shout out to DVDs. I think it's sort of a similar process today, which is there's something beautiful about the simplicity of that.
So beautiful.
You know, and like no phone, like none of that garbage. Like who's talking? No,
just, it doesn't matter. You're really in the moment, and you're like experiencing. And again, we talk about like inner child, and I just like singing songs in the druggy buggy on the way to a meeting, or like just laughing,
like
or
rocking
just
out to like a radio station,
right? That like because we get the radio, like exactly. Like don't go too much or they'll shut it off. Just like really trying to stay under the radar. But just anything like that, having fun, and just laughing over the most ridiculous things, you know, and I don't even remember, but we used to have, I mean, so much fun.
What did you do after treatment? How long were you here, by the way?
Okay, I was here, I was inpatient for 42 days.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know.
Good for you.
Well, it's because they had no, back then, they didn't have women's extended care. They didn't have women's still waters, which is why I'm such a big advocate for, like, love women's still waters, love women's aftercare support.
Yeah.
But I mean, I was here for 42 days, and I mean, my mom probably would have kept me 90 if it was financially feasible. Yeah. You know, because it was like, okay, you're doing so well, like we don't want you to leave.
Yeah.
So she had quite a few conversations with Kathy Knox, and somehow they got 42
Shout out
days.
To Kathy. Yeah.
And afterwards, there weren't a ton of good options, so I ended up going to Mending Hearts.
Okay.
So the female options, but it's a lot different today than it was in 2008. Yeah, a lot of like, you know, bars on the windows and gunshots. I mean, it was just different. It was a different neighborhood. Now I drive by and it just looks like a whole, they've got that whole street and it's amazing. Yeah. But back then it was just, it was early on in kind of their process. So, and I was there for maybe.
Also that side of town?
Yeah.
Like Charlotte?
Yeah.
Like none of that, like.
It was
double dogs different. And all that nice, like walk your dog.
Trendy back then.
Right. None of that. Even the Nations, like, wasn't.
No, it is a completely different.
You're just like, keep going. Let's make our way to Brentwood.
Don't make eye contact.
I get it. Yeah. Totally different place.
Yeah, it was.
How long did you stay there?
So I was at Mending Hearts probably around 6 months.
Okay.
And I didn't have a car because I signed my car over to my mom. Like, I had never had, for me, when I turned 22 when I was at Cumberland Heights.
Okay.
And I had zero life skills. Like, I had been dropped out of 2 different colleges. You know, I had never, like, I had maybe worked, but wait tables. Like, I didn't have to pay for anything. You know, I was so enabled and I just didn't have any life skills. So I just remember, like, at Mending Hearts, I remember they flipped my bed. I was definitely one of those, like, for not making it, you know, not knowing how to do that. I mean, just little life skills. Never paid rent before. I didn't even really comprehend that. I think my first load of laundry, everything was pink, you know, because you don't put the whites in with the color. Like, it was like the level of, like, how do I do this, you know? So I was there for 6 months, and I got a job at Kroger.
That's right.
With my friend Olga. Yes. And that was
70.
Yeah. The Bellmead Fresh Fare Kroger. We had so much fun.
Yeah, y'all did.
Like, I just think about, like, all of these periods in my life where it's like, God, you're struggling. Like, I've never done this. I don't know, like, how to pay rent. But it's like, I look back and I'm like, this sense of, like, underlying, like, the thing through it all is, like, this sense of community and belonging and support. And, like, through that, it's like everything was so much fun.
Where did you meet Olga?
At Mending Hearts.
Okay, so she was already there or came after or whatever?
Yeah, she was there when I got there, and so we met, and she was already working at Kroger, and so she got me a job there, and so we used to, because she didn't have a car either, so we used to wake up at, like, I don't know, 4:30, go to the bus stop, take the bus downtown Nashville, switch buses, take that to Kroger every day.
So imagine having to do that today. Like, just, like, kudos to you for the willingness. To just, like, let's just do whatever it takes. Yeah. And probably all the way through, we're, like, pretty grateful.
Yeah.
You know, like, this is awesome. Let's go to work. What's going to happen at the Kroger bakery today? You know? Like,
right. And it was fun. I mean, again, like, with so much of this stuff, like, and that's a big piece of my story where I was, like, for a long time, like, I don't want to be in recovery because that's going to suck. It's not going to be fun. Yeah. I just see all these old men chain smoking. Right. And, like, I want to live. Like, I remember, like, I want to be able to dress up for Halloween because it's my favorite holiday. And my first Halloween, so I left Cumberland, like, mid-September in 2008. 42 days after 8/108.
Yeah.
And I left, and I just didn't know what to do on Halloween, but I knew that I loved this holiday, and I didn't want like me getting clean to stop that. And so I dressed up as this bull rider. It was one of those big inflatable things, and I didn't know what to do, so I came to Crossover. And I remember being in the meetings, and like I'd have to like deflate it to sit down, and all these people were like, but it was funny. I mean, we laughed about it, and I was like, I love Halloween, and I know that what I need to do to stay happy and free. And so I just came out here. And that's the cool thing about like staying in Nashville and being so connected is that like, and where the alumni comes in, because again, it's that sense of community and belonging where it's like no matter what, I knew that like this place saved my life and I want to stay connected to it. So I came out here and I hung out until you hired me eventually.
Right.
Yeah.
So who else was a part of your crew early on? Like when did you meet Gibbons?
She was coming out. She was the alumni president at the time, like the first female, because I think when I was in treatment it was Scott Adams. And then after... And I just saw the big alumni crowds, like when I was a patient, and I was like, they're having fun.
It's like standing room only.
I mean, huge, right? And you see all these, and I'm like, all these people aren't full of shit. Right. You know, like they can't all be. Like these people are having fun.
They seem happy. Like something's weird's happening.
But I'm like, I'm going to follow them, you know? And so I think shortly after that, then Jamie became the alumni president. And again, like she seemed too happy. Where I was like, she's full of shit. You don't know.
Just relax. You know, we get it.
So it was, I think shortly after that, you know, she was there and just other people that I got to see, like, you know, John and Tony and Olga and Brandy. Like there was a group of people that were there every Friday and every Saturday. And so it's like you see them when you're in treatment, at least I did. And then when we start coming back as alumni, you know, then you see them then. And so I just latched on because I was like I was so terrified to go back to using or go back to anywhere near like that hell that I had just come from. And so I was like, I latched on to people that I knew were doing this thing and having fun and doing it successfully. And I just kind of rode with that.
I think you're exactly right. I think it's important, like, for anybody that doesn't know anything about treatment, in particular, like adult addiction treatment, you know, it's important that that place, wherever it is, you know, the Cumberland Heights of Wisconsin or whoever, you know, that they have a community. Actually, that's interesting how you would sort of measure that or codify that. How can you tell if an organization has the community that's required for an adult to heal?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of addiction treatment programs, 17,000 some odd and some change.
There's a lot. According
to the federal government. So not all of them are created equal. What would you say to a family looking for a treatment center, what they should look for?
I mean, I think, you know, for me, like I want reviews, like I want to talk to people. I want to, because like anybody can put anything on a website, you know, and I always love that, like, let me talk to other people that have been there, you know, because there's something about like, you know, again, any website can say anything. I get calls today where somebody will connect me with a family and they've called, you know, and people have really good SEO, and I'll get this family in crisis for an adolescent that it's called like 6 places, and then finally gets to me because there was a human that answered it that's like, hey, I know Jamie, call her. Right. You know, and then I'm going to kind of walk with her until she finds, or they find the right program. But I think internet is crazy nowadays. You know, you're finding a lot of things. So I always like live people. I like to talk to people. I like to talk to people that have gone through there. You know, and I think as far as like, what are you looking for? You know, one of the things for me that I love about Cumberland Heights is that it's been around for so long. Like this is not just a little fluke. This is a staple since, you know, the 60s.
Right. No, you're right about that. Reviews are important too.
Yeah.
You know, your financial status, etc. Yeah, that's super interesting.
Or talking to other, like I do that with Family First a lot of times. I'll say, like, if somebody's not sure, then let's talk to a mom or a family of somebody that's been through our program. Yeah. Because it's different than when you're hearing it from staff.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, because I remember, so when did we meet?
When did you go through here? Because I remember you were a patient.
2010.
Because you had the hair. And I was like, that guy's cool.
Right. That was what I was going for, you know. Yeah, it was just like the facade.
I was like, we need to hang out with him. He's got a good hair situation.
Right. And I'll overshare, you know, like any good newcomer, like just happy to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what, so I remember.
So I must met you at Crossover.
Probably.
Yeah.
Because that's all, I just remember that group, that cohort.
Would have grown by then too. I think when you're picking more people up along the way.
Yeah, it starts to like
right.
like
it's
a snowball.
Yeah.
But it was, Jamie and John and Brandy and you and Olga and Billy.
Yes.
And Nico.
Yes.
Because Nico had gone through a few months before.
Okay.
And it was all that kind of time period / the road group.
Yeah.
5925. Yeah.
Jeff and I were talking about that the other night, like just how much fun that was and how it's like, oh, we have to go to a meeting tonight. No, it was like, oh, this is what we're doing tonight. And if something else comes up, like I can't, I've got my meeting.
Every night.
Yeah.
It was intense. So we are former roommates.
Yes.
But just to be clear, this was a house of like 8 people.
Let's be even more clear. It was a house of 7 men and me. Okay.
I don't remember. So I just remember living there and showing up and Dustin living in the basement, and us having our little spot. I don't remember how that came together. Were y'all were already living there?
Yes. So it was me, Dustin, and then another guy on the lease. And there were 3 of us on the lease, and we found it, and it was like back then in Nashville, like I don't remember what the rent was. I think we probably charged you guys more because it was great for us. Anybody that was on
I remember
the lease.
It was pretty like once it was all shared, it was pretty.
There was like 8 guys. I mean 8 of y'all. There was a lot of dudes in that house. But listen, I will also say that there was rotation.
There was after we left.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we were part of the first cohort.
Was that back when you were working at a funeral home? Mm-hmm. And you used to come in wearing suits? Mm-hmm. And I was like, now what does he do? And I didn't know you that well. Mm-hmm. I knew Nico more, but I was like, well, this guy is... And that's when like you got your first paycheck and you were like, why are they taking so much money out of it? And Jamie was like, it's called taxes.
Yeah. She loves to tell that story too.
No, it's a good story.
I mean, who knew?
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
That's the same life skills thing, like just like zero like understanding of how any of that worked,
Yeah. No, it was fun. It was there was like 8 bedrooms, more than that.
It was a huge
downstairs.
house in
Bellevue.
Huge. I don't even know, like in hindsight, the neighbors, like we never had any issue to my knowledge, but we were always outside smoking cigarettes and But what is cool about it, in my opinion, is it was really a group of committed people in recovery, because it wasn't a halfway house,
right?
But we kind of acted like one, like we had our rules and expectations, and everybody paid rent, and we hosted meetings there from
Yeah, you hosted a men's meeting there. I just want to clarify that as well, because I remember like coming home from work and I'd be exhausted and there's just cars everywhere and I can't get in my driveway, and I go in and there's like 20 guys in my living room, and I was just like, are you shitting me? You can edit all that, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
right.
If you want.
But that's real.
Yeah, it's real. Really, I was like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah. Are you ready to talk about the ranch dressing situation? Do you still remember that?
Yeah. I just remember, and that wasn't me that did that, by the way. But I do remember that one of you guys did not put you put a perishable condiment. You didn't refrigerate it.
Right.
And
for an extended period of time.
Yeah. So I think somebody else in the house left it on your bed.
Right. That's what happened.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. These are good lessons to learn, though.
It is. I don't know that. Yeah.
Nico still laughs about that.
I mean, I still laugh. I think it's hilarious, by the way.
So we move away, blah, blah, blah. It's not about us. But y'all are there for some time.
Yeah.
How long were you living there for?
I can't remember. I think, what's funny is I went from that place with all those guys to then my own apartment. And it was my first time. I was probably there for another year. Yeah. I just moved into my own apartment.
How was that?
It was awesome because I had never lived by myself before.
Right.
And so I remember like... it was just like, I want to do this because I've never done this. I've always had a roommate or been like financially dependent on someone. So this was like, I lived for a year by myself. And I loved it.
Where were you in Bellevue?
Yeah, I was at Iroquois.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of those apartment complexes.
And so, tell us how you got working in the field. Was this your first job here at Cumberland Heights?
Yep.
Working in behavioral health?
So when I got...
What was your job?
Patient registration in 2012. Yes. And so I stayed very involved coming out here all the time. And I just knew, I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do, but I knew that like, I thought it was hopeless and I did not see that it would be possible for me to ever not only get clean and sober, but be happy and thrive like that. I was like, maybe I can, abstain from using for 24 hours. Maybe, I started to think about that, but I didn't think that I would be I didn't comprehend the freedom from active addiction.
Yeah.
And it was just a whole new level. And so for me, again, I'm so desperate doing whatever they tell me to do. And then, maybe 2 years in, I'm like, wow, like I haven't thought about drinking or using. Like I'm so happy. Right. There's these things in my life, like these promises that are coming true. And so again, I just kept doing what I know works. And that's like coming out here, sharing my story to the current patients, like again, being as involved as I can, working my own program. And so I think just through that, then I started inpatient registration here in 2012. And again, it's just like you're coming home. Like it was just fun. I think all of my memories of working here is just like it's that same kind of community environment, like that family. We just have a lot of fun.
Yeah. I think too, people when they get their first, because my first job in treatment wasn't here. It was blah 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 place in Texas, and there's so much pride that I had in
coming home.
Well, yeah, but working in treatment particularly, yes, that's true in terms of coming back to Cumberland. But like working in treatment specifically, just kind of the mission mindset of. We get to help people, like that idea of like, this is exciting now. We've been coming across, or we've been doing all this service. Like, okay, now we're like, let's do more, like that. And I never, ever before recovery or rehab thought of myself as like in the helping, like I was going to be an accountant.
Yeah. That makes so much sense, by the way.
Right. Trauma. Right.
Or just like because very like to a T.
Well,
like,
now it makes sense. But like back then when I was like, working at a funeral home and like had long, like you mentioned, like
the hair.
I was really lost in maybe the expectation of like the culture around me,
Yeah.
But feeling just like an immense pride. And I can hear it in your voice, like being able to work at patient registration is like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Like,
and just help people and like, and be a part of a mission you believe in.
What'd you learn? Well, first of all, what does patient registration do here at the time?
So at the time we were kind of signing in anybody coming in to check in, we would sign them in. We would verify benefits. So I'm on the phone with insurance. Like it was a lot of that kind of back end stuff on the beginning. We would create releases in the system. Yeah. So just a lot of that stuff. So it helped me really learn about like, all that stuff. It helped me learn about like insurances and that situation, and also like just healthcare in general.
Right. All like the paperwork that it takes to like pull the trigger, so to speak, to get somebody into treatment. Yeah.
We had to create aliases one time. That was a whole thing with like a huge paper chart.
Yeah.
Like, man, nobody knows who.
Were we on paper chart back then?
No, for this one special person who needed an alias.
Right.
That was patient reg though.
Yeah. And, oh gosh. What is also really unique about patient reg or like the similar department at every treatment center in the country is being like the face that a family sees when they walk in, and it's like a bad day. Do you have any memories of that?
Well, first of all, if you were having a bad day, wouldn't you want to see this face?
Sure.
Wouldn't that make it better?
Exactly.
No, I mean, I think I was passionate about it, I would, ask me any questions you've got, whatever I can do. And part of it was
probably like, whoa.
they had this sliding glass window, so we weren't
really?
like out there. Yeah. Do they not have that window anymore?
Like open and shut?
Yeah.
No, it's
they had
just
a bell
like all
outside
open.
of it. Bobby Kent used to just ring it so much when he was in admissions.
Just over and over again.
Yeah.
No, it's kind of more open now.
So when we would put the electronic signing out there, and they would just sign, and
we still got the signature pads.
Okay. Yeah. So, but no, I mean, I didn't interface too much with go out there and sit down with the families more, because they had been working with an admissions counselor that would come on and get them, and so this was more just some of that stuff on the back end.
Gotcha. Yeah. How long were you in that job?
1 year before Jay Crossan and Nika Harris recruited me to accounts receivable.
Really? I didn't know you worked in AR.
Yeah.
How was that? You probably learned a lot down there.
I did. I learned a lot. Yes. It was 1 year. So tell people what accounts receivable did here, at least at that time. Well, just looking at unpaid bills and essentially collections. And I did not love that. I think when I learned a lot, I learned that I like being around people. And I don't thrive being in a cubicle. And so it was just, that was probably, now, granted, we still had fun, but I did not, that was probably my least favorite job.
Right.
And so I was there for a year, and then, like I said, I was real passionate about still waters and having the men's still waters, and my home group used to take meetings up there, and for so long, especially with like me not having that option when I was in treatment, hearing the whisperings of them opening a women's still waters, I was like, I want to be involved in this. So I left accounts receivable to help start the women's still waters. Because the first time I went to the men's, I was like, how do I get involved in, how can I stay here? Yeah. Do I need to wear a disguise? Like, how can I do this? Because this is like, it speaks to me. And so I helped with the women's still waters.
Yeah.
And then I was there.
What was your role there?
I mean, everything. We used to train up at the men's, which was really cool. So we would stay over there and be in group with them and all of that. And so I think on paper or it was peer counselor.
Yeah.
And so we would lead groups. We would do, I
didn't know that.
We did everything. That. Yeah. I mean, we were cleaning that house for months before we were officially licensed to take girls.
Yeah.
So that was, I was just there. Like, we were rewriting stuff, like, tweaking the curriculum, putting the booklets together.
When's the last time you went out there?
Oh, man.
It's been a while?
Yeah, it has.
Alexis is running.
I know. And I'm so happy about that.
Yeah.
I already know. I've talked to Heath about that. I've talked to her.
Yeah.
Because when I left Stillwater, I remember, like, I talked to her, and I just remember telling Heath, like, that's who you need to hire. Like, it was just something, like, on my way out, and I was like, she gets it.
But that wasn't your last stop with us. You went to outreach.
Yes, I was still under the Stillwater's umbrella.
That's right.
So I was doing the peer counselor for 2 years.
Yep.
And then and I did a lot of stuff in that. Like, I thought I wanted to do ropes. And I was also like, I was getting married, I was buying my first house, and I was finishing my degree. So I had like so many big life things happening.
Huge.
And I think maybe getting a little burnt out, or just, I would give families my cell phone and be like, call me anytime. Or like, on Saturday, which I worked 12-hour shifts on Saturday, so I guess that doesn't really, but I was just there a lot for 2 years and very much on. And so I thought, okay, what's another kind of option? I got, Cumberland Heights actually got me certified in adventure therapy. So I went to Adventure Works and I got certified as a challenge course practitioner. Right. And I love that. I used to come up here and do that with like Jimmy Hudgens.
Yeah.
And I love doing some of those experiential things. And so I'm like, okay, well, maybe if I can do this and then also add this, because I love those, like, I love experiential and any type of like adventure therapy. Yeah. So anyway, I was, I switched from being like that peer counselor to outreach. And then I had done that for probably about 2 years until I left.
You're working for Heath, right?
Mm-hmm. Under
Butch.
Kind of. Yeah, like under Heath's umbrella. So on like paper, I reported to him, but then also working with the outreach team a lot and Butch and Tyson.
Yeah, which is where you've stuck and stayed, I guess, in the field.
Yeah,
really.
and I think once I found it, I was like, okay, this feels right. Because for me, I love like being burnt out with that kind of individual one-on-one. For me, I get work. It is hard, but also this feels like very much the best of both worlds, where I get to help a family in crisis. They call me and I get to hold their hand through this crisis, make sure that they feel seen and heard, and then kind of implement some solutions and then help them get the help that they need. And then I can maybe talk to them 6 months later and while they're doing well.
And Family First was where you went right after here, right?
No.
Where were you in the meantime?
Nashville Recovery Center.
That's right. And then you went to Family First.
Yes.
Yeah. That's right.
And I never knew that I would want to work with adolescents. I never necessarily sought that out. For me, I was kind of like at this point in my career where I'm like, what do I want to do?
Yeah.
And I remember a call with Michaela Kyle, and I just thought, okay, I'll hear about Family First.
Right.
And I had known some folks that had sent kids down there, and they'd said great things. But again, I didn't know that this was what I wanted to do. But I remember after I hung up that call with Michaela, we talked for like an hour. And I remember I felt so fired up after we got off the phone. Yeah. And so then I met like one of their founders, Ben. And then I met James McManus. And the whole team, I was like, this feels right. It's that thing in my gut where I'm like, this is really cool to be a part of this.
How has Family First changed you think? What have you learned? How long? Because you've been there, 5-6 years?
No. You've just been wrong on all of these, but it's amazing. So I've been there since October of 2022.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
That's not right.
It doesn't make sense if you think I went right from Stillwaters to Family. So I think that's what the problem is.
Got it. Okay.
Is that you're forgetting like a whole middle career.
Well, and maybe I'm forgetting that it's only been 5 years since I've been here.
Oh.
Continue.
Okay.
So 2022.
Yeah, so October 2022 I started. And I think for me, like being in 12-step recovery and like growing up that way, like, and something I kind of ran into a lot like throughout my journey was that like some of these folks that I would see kind of come in and out of the rooms, or, you know, just families that I would talk to where it's like, you know, nothing's working or we don't know. And then there's a lot of underlying trauma, or there's other things going on underneath the surface that has never been addressed. And so I think like with I had started to see some of these patterns. And so I think working at Family First, where they specialize in complex and developmental trauma, and that is like, I have learned so much about that. You know, and I think for me, it's just been a good, because a lot of these kids, like a 12-year-old is not an alcoholic. You know, there's so many things where we don't want to just slap a label on you, but like, hey, we know there's some behavioral issues. And maybe you're acting out and you've picked up vape or THC or something, but it's even before you pick that up, there's some other stuff going on. So I think with Family First, it's like we really want to get to the underlying issues that are driving the problem behavior. And so we don't necessarily, you know, put a label on or focus on one of those manifestations. For us, it's let's get to the root cause of what is the driver behind all of that. And I think that's kind of their modality, you know, how everything's through that lens.
So Family First has mental health primary and addiction primary for adolescents?
Yep. Yeah, so they're duly licensed.
Let me ask you a question, and let's just like have the conversation because I think it's interesting. Nobody else probably. Shout out to like our mostly your friends that'll watch this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So how do we balance? Let's just say I work for Family First. How do we balance an adolescent program that is celebrating recovery and probably teaching recovery skills and also equipped with the evidence-based practices associated with trauma or complex trauma, developmental trauma as you described it? How do we create space for an adolescent to not necessarily be an alcoholic at 13, 14, 15, 16, but also try to help them grow into the best version of themselves? Are you following me? Because the adult world can be very binary about like, hey, it's either this way or no way.
Sure. And I think like what I've seen for these kids, it's just a different approach. And I'll say like some of the things that I loved about Family First, and I've been learning since I got here, about like, and we're so clinically sophisticated. So we've got like a little over a 3-to-1 staff to client ratio. So we've got the ability to put every kid on a one-on-one if needed. So there's a very kind of strong clinical component. And through that, I've learned we do a lot with, everything's kind of through this lens of the neuroaffective relational model, which is really, you know, everything we do, all of our modalities are through this kind of relational lens. And so learning about, I remember they were telling me, you know, this is a non-punitive program. If you punch a wall, we're not going to kick you out. Like, we're going to kind of sit there and talk to you about it.
Right.
And if you, or kind of just be there with you, hold space for you. And if you're emotionally regulated in a few hours, when we go on our fishing trip, you can go. Like, it's stuff like that where they really want to hold space for these kids. And so, you know, that first 7 days, they're getting 5 individual sessions, and then it's a minimum of 4 a week. And so part of that is just we want to develop rapport. You know, we want these boys to have a sense of agency. We want them to have some buy-in. Because a lot of times these kids, it's not like a child or adolescents calling me like, Jamie, I need treatment. You know, we're working with these families for months. And so I think just our clinical team does a really good job of kind of learning about what's going on and then helping. I think our goal is just to help these boys be the master of their internal world. You know, and so maybe it's not going back and like rehashing all of this, but it's how are you relating to stuff now, knowing that this happened to you and that may have affected like your lens going forward.
Well, insight very rarely creates like lasting change. Like for you and I, just to speak for our stories personally, like we were probably both long aware of the nature of our problem before we were willing to do anything about it. You know what I mean? We're like, something's going on here.
Yeah.
So, but adolescence can be difficult just in terms, there's a lot of things that we can, like personally as a clinician, you know, recovering these days, but like, pacing with adolescents is different, especially if there's developmental issues associated with trauma or addiction. Like, you got to really, I remember what I liked about working with adults is I could, and this is kind of the context of who I am, like as a white male, but I could push and I could be directive and I could use that at Stillwaters.
Yeah.
I could use that as a tool.
That too. Yeah.
Right. Confrontation, like Regina.
Yeah.
Like,
Love
hey,
it.
this is,
Needed
you're
it.
like, adolescents sometimes, but also sometimes, like if a kid is having a reaction similar, like at Arch, like I love hearing that about Family First. Like, no, we should expect bad behavior.
Right.
Like, why are we?
Or expect them not to be emotionally regulated.
Correct.
They do not have the coping skills.
Correct.
Like, yeah.
And so, like, let's use that as a tool. Like, now there's a difference between like a safety issue and all that. Like,
right.
Certainly.
Absolutely.
But like, so nobody get confused about like, no, it's fine. They're just, not emotionally regulated. They just work it out. It's like, no.
Yeah.
But like, clearly having a staff that's capable to understand the etiology of those problems and to create the safe spaces for an adolescent to be an adolescent.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Is super, super valuable. And I just find it fascinating, like how we try to balance, because Arch does the same thing. Like, listen, Arch is a program, owned and operated by Cumberland Heights Foundation, which you're familiar with, which is our adolescent program. We're about to start a girls, by the way.
I already know.
Super pumped.
When are you starting it? Maybe you can give me a direct answer.
It depends on who you ask, but this fall.
I know.
This fall. We closed on the property last month, and so we got to go through the,
So you say this fall, so spring.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. Right. Yeah. But there's a chance. We'll see.
Okay. But spring.
But it's, being a part of like this, of Cumberland Heights Foundation being founded, celebrating 12-step culture, as it is a little bit of a dichotomy between, and like nobody get like upset about this, but like you said, not every kid that goes to Arch Academy is an alcoholic.
I didn't say that. I said every 12-year-old.
But I'm saying not every kid, not every 12-year-old, not every adolescent that goes to Arch Academy is an alcoholic or an addict, I mean, most of them are displaying behaviors that you and I would be like,
right,
associated with addiction. But to your point, like a lot of them, there's a reason. There's a lot of pain there.
Right. There's a lot of absolutely pain and not knowing how to cope, not knowing how to manage.
So when you're on the phone, and just let me say this, like, shout out to you, Jamie. Like, outreach is hard because most phone calls you answer are an emergency for somebody.
Yeah.
And that's, you got to be on all the time.
Yeah.
What are the themes, or what do most parents want to know in that first, second, or third call about treatment when they're trying to, what comes to mind when
Well,
they're trying
a
to help
lot
their
of
kid?
families that I talk to, like, they don't even know it's treatment they're looking for.
Interesting.
I think depending on where, they may say, like, so-and-so gave me your number.
Right.
And they're, like, a lot of these families are like, I don't even know what to Google. But they start maybe Googling stuff and they don't even know that there is residential treatment. I'll talk to so many families where it's like, we just know something's wrong, but we don't even necessarily know how to verbalize what's wrong. And we really don't know what the solution is. But I think, part of my role also, and this is like a big thing that I like about working with Family First and with all of the programs we work with, is that we don't want to just treat the adolescent and send them right back into the same environment. You can't, like, they don't really exist outside of the family unit. And so a big part of what we do is the families are doing their work while their kids are with us, because they need to. We need to, not only to help support their kiddo, but also for them as they start to heal. And so we really want to focus on the family systems. And so a lot of these calls, maybe they'll be rattling off, here's a list of all this stuff going on. But I think it a lot of times becomes pretty evident to me of, okay, well, what are you doing? What are you doing? Or, I'll hear about conflict or different kind of issues that arise. And
surrounding.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
And it's like,
to be clear, like different conflict in the home with different members of the family.
Out of the home. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, both. It's like you can hear all of the other factors into like that are kind of leading up to like whatever the problematic behavior is.
Right.
And so
which gets somebody to call.
Yeah.
The problematic behavior.
Well,
is like
when it gets bad enough, then they'll pick up the phone, and hopefully they'll do it before, because I also have families where I talk with them, kind of outline everything, hear what's going on, kind of talk about my recommendations, and we're good for now. And then I get the crisis call maybe a few weeks later because they're hospitalized because they tried to commit suicide, and now they're ready to, it seems like I get that kind of the exploration, or now here we are, they're in the hospital, we're ready to move forward.
Yeah.
So it's just, for me, I want to, kind of listen and help them identify what's going on. And a lot of the folks I talk to, maybe they've never even tried therapy. They've never tried psychiatry. They've never tried, there's some local outpatient options. I know like your substance use IOP for adolescents that can also take girls, so there's some of that where if I've got a family and they've not tried any of these steps, and maybe the presenting problem is primarily substance use, and it's, now I'm on probation or X, Y, and Z, I may plug them into some local options first. So just, I gather some information. I want to hear what's going on. I want to hear what they've done. Has it worked? What's not worked? Kind of where are you struggling? If they've maybe been going to outpatient programs for 6 months and he keeps getting hospitalized, then, okay, I think we need to look at the next level of care because something's not working. So I don't think we should, because maybe next time, you never know. And especially when you're talking about, we see a lot of suicide, we just see a lot of self-harm, suicidality, a lot of that. And it's just, it's scary.
Kids that you can't take?
So I would
from
say,
a severe mental illness perspective?
If active, we can do drug-induced psychosis. I think if somebody's, and I would say with most of it, because we have such a good kind of staff to client ratio, we can assess a lot of it. And if we feel like they will be a good fit for the particular milieu, our milieus are separate. So there's between 6 to 12 boys per house, and they are completely separate. So each house has its own treatment team, and they don't even know there's other boys in treatment. So
how many houses?
We have 5.
Okay.
So a 17-year-old heroin addict is not going to room with a 12-year-old with, that's on the spectrum with social anxiety. So we can really kind of separate and filter them in by best fit.
Are the houses, is it always separate by mental health? When I say mental health, but mental health primary diagnosis and addiction primary diagnosis? Or does it just depend on other factors?
I say it depends on other factors.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and so our admissions team does a great job because they're going to want to kind of get all of the information. So when folks say, do you have availability? It's well, let's talk about maybe. Right. Because on this house, we've got maybe next week. But on this one, we've got immediate availability. So, and I don't necessarily know the pulse of the community like our admissions team does that's on site.
And are all these houses on the same property?
So they're all within a very close radius to each other. And so we take them to the gym every day. And so we'll kind of stagger when they go to the gym, or take them in the classroom. So they're not in the classroom together. So each kind of unit, maybe they will be in the classroom from 10 to noon. And then the other ones. So we have a lot of kind of intersecting locations.
How many staff do y'all have?
So 170 something.
Yeah.
And I think we have 50.
And it's not just residential for boys?
It is.
Okay.
Girls are coming soon.
When it's...
I've been waiting. Don't know.
When is this?
They said before the end of 2024. And now it's on a podcast, so I feel like it has to happen.
Both of us. Now, you heard it here first. 2 adolescent programs are starting up.
So adolescent girls coming soon.
Okay. Very cool. Will it be in the same area? Mm-hmm. Do you know how you guys are preparing differently for that population, or the same, or?
Yeah, I think part of what we want to do, and I don't know as much about that because we've got so many, like I said, a great clinical staff that is kind of in the meetings that is looking about that. And I think, and we were started by 2 male clinicians, and I think they wanted to create a program that not only it treated the kiddos, but also focused on treating the families. And so that they started with 4 boys in 2014 in Palm Beach Gardens, and then just grew to 8 boys, and then slowly grown. And so I think the comfort there, because they're male clinicians and treating boys. And so now I think that we've got such a robust and knowledgeable clinical staff, and we can start looking at implementing the female ones as well. But I know there's been a lot of meetings and conversations about that.
It's a whole different challenge. I mean, from for those that don't know, you have you have an organizational license that you have to consider through the state or territory that your program is located in, and then there's the whole insurance credentialing process that you have to make sure. Then you have to staff up, right? So there's a literal front end investment to staff, especially a 3-to-1 or a quality program like Family First, like you're going to do it right.
Right.
And then you have to start, outreach.
Yeah.
And ideally you're starting a little bit of that word of mouth, so that people know that resource is available. Because it's interesting. I will say this, so in 2020, because Arch, moved from this campus, of course, to where it is in Pegram, April 1st, 2020.
Okay.
Which is just an odd time.
Yeah.
Just like April Fool's Day and also COVID.
Yeah.
Weird time.
Yeah.
Where was I going with that? At that time, there was a lot of programs that were closing.
Right.
Adolescent.
Yeah.
I remember just some peer organizations and colleagues of ours, really, you're opening up, you're investing X amount of dollars in adolescent boys. You're like, yeah, we are, blah, blah, blah. We feel good about it. And it's been a resounding success.
Yes.
The program really changed. What's interesting, because this location is so dominated by an adult 28-day
Yes.
modality. Once they moved to their own independent campus, they had plans to switch it, but it's been interesting to see that totally transform into this 4 to 6 month program.
Yeah, it's been great.
Well, what I was going to ask you is, with all of this, that recent documentary that came out about
the program.
The program is what it's called, but it was all about, I don't know, particular therapeutic schools, lockdown facilities that are unlike the programs that you and I have been talking about today. I'm curious if you guys ever have to wade through that.
I have.
From
we haven't. No. And I think part of that is, again, just that we're non-punitive and we are not a lockdown facility, and we've got.
Did you watch the documentary?
Yeah, it was hard to watch.
It was rough.
I did watch it. Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah.
But I think it also shows to me, highlights the need for parents to be educated. I think just because again, it's with some of these families I talk to where they're like, I don't know what to do. Somebody told me to just call you, whether that's a therapist or they've called an admissions number of somewhere and they said, call Jamie. Whatever it is, it's like, okay, let me help you get there. And I think it's just that they're clueless. And that's what I see a lot of times too, is working with families or, educators or just different folks in the community where it's like, hey, we don't really know what to do next, but here's some things that we're seeing.
I think a good place to start is a program like Family First and go to y'all's website or go to YouTube, see the different organizations that y'all are connected to. That is, if you're a parent and you're trying to better understand, get your arms around the language and the culture and, accreditation, licensure, quality, safety. I've always y'all have a great website. Shout out to y'all. We're in the middle of a revision right now. Also arch.org, go read about what these programs do before you, what you're talking about, are in an emergency. Yeah. It really counts.
'Cause I've also had families call me when their kids are already placed in a residential and they're like, we made a mistake.
Eesh.
So that's a whole nother, or here's what's happening. And I'm like, look, I've never been there. Here's some options to get in the solution.
Right. So what's next for you? What's next for you? What's happening with your family? What do you hope? You just loving Family First. You're going to open this girls' adolescent.
They are going to open that.
Excuse me.
But I will help.
You will be there to support
it because
it's still you. You're part of the team.
Ready. Yes, but no. So what's next for me is I'm going to go home and fight traffic and go get my dogs. And I've got a Zoom at 5.
Where are your dogs?
At my brother's house.
Oh.
He's got a doggy door, and I drop them off on the way.
And they just run in there.
They're run in and out, and they come home tired. Because there's 4 dogs there right now.
Good.
My mom's actually in town with her dog, and plus my brother's dog, and it's just...
Well, thank you for being here. We love you a lot. Are you going to come to homecoming?
When is it?
I don't know yet.
Okay. Then yes. But also, I'd love to know when, and I'll put it in my calendar.
Talk to Stacey Bridges, because it's her fault that that's not... I'm just kidding. It's totally...
Are you posting all of this?
What?
All of you just blasting people and giving away endings of shows? Is all of this... Are you editing
Oh,
it?
yeah. No, we're just going to throw it all in there,
Okay.
You
got to sift through if you get there.
Let me ask you this question. Who else should we have on the show? Who would you invite next?
Oh, man. I don't know who's all been on the show. So
it's good to know that you haven't listened to any of our episodes. Nice.
Well, I mean, I have. First of all, is this on Spotify?
It is.
I will now that I know about it. I have liked your stuff on Instagram, though.
Thank you.
Also.
Appreciate
that. And I'm
that.
going to keep doing that.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Has Ryan been on? I mean, gosh. I'm just saying.
Yeah, okay. Well, we love you. Thank you for being here.
Love you guys.
Shout out to Jamie Gibbons. We love you too. Maybe you guys should be on together and you could really go down a rabbit hole.
Really? Or will she talk about what it was like to meet me while I was in treatment? That whole time. Because that's, well, I don't know. It's dangerous.
Is that her?
You don't know what's going to come out of her mouth.
That you don't, ever.
She's unhinged.
We love you.
Love you.
See you next time.